Hello, my name is Zateo, and today we're going to be looking at a replay review of Gryfh, our light green 30 OS player. Oops, I did not mean to put it on their camera. Let's just put it on their view. There we go. Alright, let's get into it. Alright, so I'm not going to go over a lot of the very early stuff, just point out minor things. Some of which are going to be more along the lines of a mistake instead of an understanding um, problem. So here, I would argue try not to build this on the trees because, you have to sit there and spend the time reclaiming the trees, and you don't you don't really need the energy right now, and it's just kind of slowing down your overall energy production. So just, rearranging where these buildings are placed, where these solars are. I think you're about to do this tree? No. Must be, you might have to do this tree for this bot lab here. Let's see. Speed up a little bit. Okay, grab the max. Okay, so that's the other thing. Okay, so um, if you're going to get 3 mexes, try to get the third one sooner. Um, Ideally, because metal is oftentimes the thing that you need, so you want to grab it ASAP, and then this bar will be a little bit higher by the time you get your bot lab. Just a little bit, but it's enough to matter at least somewhat. Um, so the other thing is if you're going to open solar, you don't really need to solar before, or you don't even really need energy before the third max, since they don't cost energy to build. You might stall just like like a second when you build this max, but honestly, it's not really enough to like put that off. You might as well just grab all 3 and then throw down 2 solars, and then your lab. And just rearranging it that way will get you just a touch more metal. And then yeah, just like putting the solars maybe down here or something instead so that they don't require eating the tree. Okay. This I would say is a bit of a mistake too. You don't quite need it yet. Mostly because you're going to want another solar or another, some wind or something. Um, before moving your commander out, and the commander can actually like safeguard this whole zone because he's central. He's sitting there in between the entire thing, so he can actually defend against like all the ticks that come through. And if it's like a ton of ticks or scouts or whatever, and they pick off a couple of mexes or something, like it doesn't really take that long to rebuild. It's not that big a deal. So you're getting some grunts out, bit of idle time here. Which I would just call a mistake for sure. Ideally, you want longer queues. Send your commander way out here, or just straight up grab the max. Might be helpful to just be zoomed out a little bit to grab, to be able to do that, and then build out here with your con at the appropriate time. I got Resbot out, grunts out. Yeah, I feel like this grunt could be pushed forward because you have some radar from your allies, and now you have your own radar here, so you know that you don't really need this grunt here. He could be out in the front a little bit more. I'd say on this map in particular, because the mexes are like more or less centralized between the 2 teams, and you don't really have a lot just for yourself, these mexes become more important. So ideally you want to get your commander out on the fronts sooner, and that little bit of stall time definitely hurt a bit. But also, eating that tree set it back a little bit. Getting this light laser tower, and you might want to actually consider just not building the tower at all, and instead, just trying to rely on grunts for scout spam and stuff. It'll just help your commander get out there a bit sooner. But yeah, in terms of resources, like you got the right amount of resources, you cranked out, constructor, you had, some defense with your grunts. It felt like a little bit too much defense. You may be able to get away with something like, build a constructor first, crank it out with your commander, and then push them forward, assuming that you have 4 solars. That's a reasonable time for all that. 4 solars is to me kind of like standard if you have 3 mexes before pushing out with your commander, especially when the metal's kind of low. Another thing I want to point out really quick too is that the wind speed is not, it's not like crazy good or anything like that, but like 10 average is actually quite good compared to solar. Solar is just so inefficient, and so you kind of want to possibly just go into a bit more wind instead of 4 solar. You could do 2 wind instead of one of these solars or something like that. That is not to say that having some solar on this map is not a bad, that's not a bad idea to have a couple. I just feel like it might set your metal back quite a bit, because they are so metal heavy. Let's get rid of that drawing. So yeah, here your opponents already control the center. They got there pretty fast. They have a bunch of pawns out here. Pawns and grunts, looks like. Unfortunately, that guy dies. I don't know. I'm just doing some drawing. But I do like this. You're controlling the area. You have, you're building a tower here on the hill, and that's going to help you out quite a bit. Doing some repair, very nice. Oh, you're going for the D gun. It looks like. Don't quite get it. Brown or orange covers it pretty well there. And then at this point, I'm starting to see a lot of grunts. Which, they're not the worst unit, but I would say, yeah, okay, you're switching it into rocket bots. Yeah, so this to me is an appropriate, okay amount of grunts. You don't really need more at this point. You just want to control the space so that scouts and stuff that try to slip by, you can cover. Unfortunately, your opponent already has some rockets out, so you lose the LLT. Probably going to lose a few more things. Yeah, I mean, in a way, I feel like you don't really need this many grunts. It could be, like, you could get the rockets out a little bit sooner to contest these that are shooting you. And you're still adding on grunts. Let's take a look at your queue. Okay, so you're just doing grunts. I would argue in this kind of spot, you don't really want grunts. Grunts being more like they're good at raiding, your opponent. They're good at controlling space, and they're good at running around stuff. But in an 8v8, arguably, it's like the area that you can run around is very minimal. Like you could maybe slip through here, but there's a tower going up here. There's probably a commander out there. There's another dot here, so the chances are pretty slim of running around at this point. And I would also say that there's also a pretty big gap here that's hard to cover. And unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but your ally below you is more helping out with this angle here against red, which is fine. But it does leave a bit of a gap here. And ideally, pushing this area for him would be helpful for you to control this gap. And then you, of course, pushing down this way to try to control this area. But yeah, orange and yellow have some good, and I should say tan, all are they're controlling the space quite well. So there's not going to be too much potential for running through there. So instead of these grunts, I would actually argue to maybe switch into plasma bots faster. Thugs are quite nice. They're very efficient compared to like other plasma bots and stuff. So I would go for that personally. Rockets aren't a bad choice either. They let you do this skirmishing. Ooh, big hit there. Yeah, so unfortunately you keep losing towers. That is another thing to consider, is maybe just not building as many towers now that the rockets are out, especially in these kinds of numbers. And it's going to be really challenging to keep these towers, and it's just going to be lost metal basically. But yeah, your opponent also has a very heavy defense here with towers. So this is already looking pretty rough because this is a good spot to hold. He has this mechs. He could potentially grab this one if he gets a little bit more space here. And he's also denying you all the way back here with those rockets. So kind of a big deal. Sorry, I apologize. I missed this run by. I believe Orange slipped some guys down here. And unfortunately, you're just a bit late on responding. Um, these grunts are ideal for covering this. You could also put down maybe like a tower over around here. You could have maybe put one here, knowing that there's a gap in this location here. And then I would also say I'm not on your view, I guess. I don't really know how zoomed in or out you are. But just being a little bit more zoomed out, it might have been easier to see those guys starting to come up here. And that's one of the harder things in RTS is just like watching, being vigilant of what your enemy's doing. Little run-bys like this, like, if you don't parry it with, sending units down here to defend it, now all of a sudden you got a bunch of pawns and stuff in your base, and that can be quite a bit of trouble, especially because a base usually has a bunch of stuff for, scouts and pawns and stuff to hide behind. So let's see what they get done here. Take out the mechs. Okay, so not too bad. It's just the mechs. I feel like that could have been worse if you came in a little bit of a different angle. Your tower's at a reasonable spot there, so you got it pretty well covered. And it was only 4 pawns, so not that big a deal. Looks like he's gearing up to maybe do a second one. Yeah, so let's see. Where's your view at? Okay, so your view's over here, unfortunately. And yeah, that's a bit, yeah, so you look back and you see this mess of units coming straight for your base and then like a secondary bit. All because of this gap here, which is unfortunate. But again, like, trying to be mindful of the gap and, adjusting accordingly, I think would help a lot here. Yeah, I'm not sure why you were looking at green space. There's probably a good reason though. Or just knowing what your ally's doing is, good too. But yeah, this is a lot more grunts than those 4 pawns, so this is going to be a lot more damage. I'm going to turn off your camera, put it back on your view. Yeah, so that's a lot more damage. I mean, there's a lot of metal here for you to reclaim, so that's the upside. Okay, you're getting build power, that's fine. Your ally's helping you out a bit here too. And your rockets you're a little bit dispersed. You got, some rockets here, you got some grunts back here, and then you got some other grunts running around back here. While that's kind of fine in a way to like cover your bases, trying to get them together to help this maybe at this point would be ideal. Just knowing, it takes some time for sure. Like this is a hard concept to like, put into like, your muscle memory. But yeah, just like being mindful of the map is such a big deal at this level of play. Seeing that gap ahead of time, seeing that your allies pushing in, maybe you can support it, type of thing. Seeing run-bys ahead of time. All this can be a big deal. And actually, what I would suggest, if I may, I know not everyone is crazy about 1v1s or anything like that, but I would argue a lot of that awareness can be trained. And it can be trained through things like 1v1s, especially if the 1v1s are on CCR. That would be Comet Catcher Remake. The reason being is if you do 1v1s on the map, it's really big, it's really open, there's lots of metal everywhere, and you can get hit by all these different like angles all over the map because it's so open and flat. So in order to stop those, you need to have awareness to stop them. You know, so it's like a good trainer for it in a way. It, you know, 1v1s play pretty differently than 8v8s and stuff, but like it's very good for training that. And then they definitely help with 8v8s and teaching your self-awareness. Um, yeah, this looks okay. You know, once you see it, you deal with it appropriately. But yeah, just resurrecting your base. I would argue grab this metal ASAP. It's definitely more important at this point than the solars. And is that you upgrading this? Okay, it's your ally's mechs, I see. Yeah, that's he I mean, so things like this, it's like your ally comes by, resurrects the mechs, right? And that's like good and everything, but then I don't know if the, you know, either A, they forget to give it to you, or B, they just take it for themselves. You know, and so that becomes a little bit rough there. And I'm not sure, but I feel like in a couple of other replays I've seen where stuff like this happens, I feel like once the mechs is upgraded, it actually goes to you now. Like if you're the one upgrading it, it'll go to you. I don't know if that's true or not. I'd be really curious if this does get finished here to find that out. But that'd be an interesting change if that's the case. Alright, so you just got, you know, you're basically on, you know, fix up your base duty at this moment. Okay, so you're reclaiming that. Interesting. But yeah, since your metal's so low, I would try to fix that ASAP. Especially since this mech is so safe in a way because it's at your base. Oh, well, that's unfortunate. Shed Hunter gets bombed. Yeah, let's see what else you do here. Getting some anti-air. Okay, good, good. Yeah, I mean, I would argue that this position isn't necessarily that important, but that's kind of where your build power is since you lost a bunch of stuff at your base. There's a bit of idle time here. Okay, I think you're just trying to build your mechs back. Okay, so it is a... Okay, I was going to say, like, if you start out just trying to do a T2 mechs, that's fine, but you're going to lose metal because it's on a T1 mechs first. You know, the T1 mechs builds very quickly, and while the T2 mechs is going up, you could be getting that metal. So I'm glad to see that you're doing that. So you decided to upgrade this one, alright. I don't mind that your factory is paused. Yeah, it's a rough thing because, you know, you lost build power, you lost, like, you know, the potential to upgrade this faster. Yeah, I mean, I would maybe even consider moving your commander back to have that bit of build power so you can get some more construction turrets, eat the lab, and upgrade these mexes with the metal and the build power that you got from that. But that's more of a choice thing, you know, and in hindsight type of thing. You know, it's like it's generally better to have your commander up here too, so it's fine. Yeah, I would. Well, actually, I take back what I said about this anti-air. So this anti-air, even though it's not like at your main base, you know, it does guard, you know, this area. So any aircraft coming in have to either go around or go through the anti-air. So it's fine. It's actually not a bad spot. I was just thinking, like, if air comes in, like, you know, a different direction, but they're not going to necessarily know to do that. So it's kind of fine. Plus, it's kind of on your allies to have that anti-air there too. So yeah, this is a lot of grunts. Okay, now these hounds are out now. So that's going to become even more unfortunate because it's hard for grunts and pawns to kill things like hounds because they're so fast. And there's even pyros here. It's not too much you can do about that. Okay, so you're upgrading your energy as well. So I'll talk about this a little bit here. I would argue that on this map, you don't want this many solars. I would say get wind instead. because wind is going to be a bit better. Um, now, so okay, so for Cortex, I believe, if I remember the numbers correctly, I believe for an advanced solar to be more efficient than winds in terms of metal cost, the wind has to, or I should say, the wind average needs to be above. I believe it's 9.1 for core, 7.5 for Armada. So Armada wind is just that much stronger. But yeah, it's not bad to build wind here. It's just you need a lot more winds than you would on something like Supreme Strait, where there's just like tons and tons of wind. But yeah, that would get you some more metal to get more units. You know, it'd afford you more thugs or whatever. Again, going back to the fact that I don't really like the grunts here as much. I mean, they look threatening. There's just like, it looks like a lot of dots, right? Just like this looks like a lot of dots. Unfortunately, this lot of dots is much more expensive, heavier duty kind of units for the most part. There are some grunts here, but there are thugs mixed in. And I think thugs can do quite well against most of this until, T2 comes out. Let's see. It's like, so thugs I would call like an assault unit. They're good at like taking stuff down when they have numbers. Stuff as in pork, stuff as in other bots. They do okay against vehicles, but not great. But yeah, I would consider it. Obviously they are a bit more metal expensive and will set you back a little bit, but I would say that having these solars sets you back a lot more. So yeah, I would argue maybe trying to go for that. Advanced solar's not bad here. It's not like terrible or anything. It's good to have some consistency. I'd just be a little bit wary of like massing up a ton of advanced solar. Now, if you do decide to keep going solar like this on this kind of map, I would say as you get these started and built and stuff, to start reclaiming your basic solars because they are just so inefficient for metal. Now, obviously, you got hit and stuff, so like you kind of just need the energy. So I can understand you keeping them for a bit, but I'm gonna be looking to see if you reclaim those later. Alright, so unfortunately the pyro cleans up your army, does a lot of damage in general to you guys. So yeah, you guys are definitely in rough shape here. So to counteract this, like if you see T2 like this at this time, and you got, or I should say you took a little bit of damage, you're a little bit behind, and so you need to prioritize certain things to get yourself back to where you need to be. So that in a way might mean cutting corners. Like in a way you don't have units here, and that's totally fine actually. You don't really need a ton of units out here. You could eat this lab and get the T2 lab after you get your mexes and stuff going. And I feel like that's what you're doing. But in a way, because your metal is so high, and part of that is because of the reclaim and stuff here, you want to add on build power as you get more and more metal. Now, obviously, the metal from the reclaim is not going to last forever, right? But arguably, getting more build power would help you get these mexes faster, and help you get the T2 out faster, and help you get, your energy situation under control faster. Given that there is that much reclaim, and there's still more reclaim, so like, to me, definitely keep eating it while also, make sure that you have the build power to actually utilize it as you eat it. Alright, let's continue on. Alright, your commander here is just kind of chilling. I can understand not eating the metal right away, because you were so high on metal, but now you can eat it, so that's good. I know it's very easy for you to lose this mex but I feel like in this position, you know, since Orange is kind of pushed back, he's probably teching right now, or you know, working his economy and whatnot. So he doesn't have a lot here. He just has these towers, and you might as well grab this with your commander. I feel just to get that bit of extra metal. That you know, two metal per second is, you know, it's not like a ton or anything, but like, you know, it's a decent, or it's significant enough that you should want it. And they pay for themselves pretty quickly too. It's like I forget what the actual time is, but it's like less than a minute. All right, so you got your T2. Getting some more nanos now. Yeah, so this, I would just like to see it a little bit sooner as well. Yeah, especially since you got your T2 mexes. You know, you're going to be able to afford stuff in terms of metal. Now obviously your metal, or your energy is a bit low, so you are adding on more advanced solar. You could prioritize them with your constructors here, or your conbots here. Anti-air, okay. And it looks like you're going into Fiends. Yeah, Fiends will be okay against, you know, these like sprinters and stuff. So I don't mind that for now. Okay, so you are eating your solar. Okay. My apologies. I feel like I see a lot of reviews where they forget to or just don't. And I just want to put that out there, that it is important to. I will say that, you know, obviously you got hit, you know, so this is just me talking for anybody else that's may not know, but I like to talk about anticipating your economy. You know, it's sort of like, you know, as you upgrade your mechs to the T2, I see people oftentimes not have enough energy to go with it. You know, and obviously in your case, like this mostly has to do with you being attacked and having to you know, figure all that out again. But just in case you're not aware of this, I like to tell people to anticipate your needs as they grow. You know, so your needs being like, you know, just thinking about your economy. If you get your T2 mexes, the T2 mexes cost more energy. You're going to need more energy. You know, and as you know, in order to spend the metal, you're going to need more energy as you build a T2 lab and stuff like that. So ideally, obviously, again, you got hit, so I understand completely. You know, trying to get some of these sooner, or trying to build some wind up. I would suggest, you know, winds after a few solar here, and then maybe getting a couple of advanced solar. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, actually, like advanced solar is great in this situation specifically since you were attacked, and then having some wins and then going into advanced solar would be good as well. Sorry, I feel like I'm talking in circles and stuff. I'm quite tired today. I'm just trying to get you a review here. But yeah, take lots of pyros. Yeah, nice combination for orange here. All right. Yeah, so this is looking all right. Your metal's, you know, now empty. Your energy, although, you know, took definitely a hit earlier, it's getting back on track now. What is your T2 guy doing? Okay, so you upgraded this mech. Okay, so you're just building this mech here. Yeah, I mean, this is good. I feel like you may want to prioritize a fusion instead of this mech. I mean, this mech is definitely important. You definitely need the metal. It's just an unsafe location. So I'm a little bit hesitant to recommend that. But I suppose it's... I mean, if you're able to keep it, it's going to be really good. I just feel like it might be hard to keep it. Nice little scorpion here to help defend it, so that's quite nice. Oof, another bombing run on Shadhunter. Oh man, that's rough. Dang. Um, let's see. So dealing with those sprinters with your pyros. Yeah, at this point I would recommend eating the T1 lab so that you get that bit of extra metal to, build more units with. Or arguably, like, sending this guy back, this T2 builder, back to your base, building a fusion. At this point, you could probably eat the rest of these basic solars. What was I gonna say? Oh, you have, okay, so you built a second guy for that stuff. All right, so I understand now. You have a guy in the front to like build defenses and help with mexes out front, and then you have a back guy to do some of that other stuff. So with that, you'll probably get a fusion pretty soon here. Big little, well, not really a big push. I guess it's just T1 stuff to eat. Lots of metal here. That's quite nice. Oh, got attacked. Your commander gets attacked. You do fine though. Yeah, I'd be very careful with just leaving your commander here without any units. That's another thing that 1v1s can teach you is that, if you leave your commander on the front, and don't support it well enough with towers or units, then all of a sudden, someone could rush in there and just kill your commander. In fact, in 1v1s, like oftentimes, that's one of the biggest differences for people is, once your commander dies, the game's over and you lose. Which means if he's unprotected and your enemy sees that, your enemy can just come in and win the game. And here, obviously it's not that, it's not as big of a deal. But of course, ideally you don't want to lose your commander to, not much. So ideally, anytime that you pull your army away from your commander, you want to pull it back a bit. Obviously you kind of want to eat all the metal, but if you feel like you need your entire army to defend a location, definitely, I would definitely recommend pulling it back. The other thing that you could do is split your army so that you have some here still at the front, and then pull away the one, just enough units to defend that run by. Yeah, because having your entire army pulled off the front anytime that there's a run by is actually a pretty big deal, because that means your opponent can just pull your army anywhere they want, and they could, essentially, like if they send like 10 guys down here, and you pull your entire army all the way back to defend this, now all of a sudden this is very unsafe and not as defended. And they might have a bigger main force to come attack it and destroy it. So I'm just saying be wary of that. Nice little push here. Unfortunately, it looked like there was a cloak commander that totally got you there. Since your commander is on the front, I would definitely recommend maybe building a radar on these hills somewhere, just to extend your radar range, and then you'd be able to see that blip and help yourself out a little bit. But that's just like standard, like good practice to have. Especially in 1v1s, it's like especially important on certain maps. But to me, anytime you take so many steps with your commander, putting down another radar to just help see further as you progress forward with your commander is quite nice. So anytime that you're pushing forward, I would highly recommend just placing some radar. I personally like to put some perimeter cameras up as well, because like even though you have, like say you control this territory, you start building mexes and stuff, like there's no guarantee that your opponent can't just push you off them in a little bit. They might have an economic advantage at that point or something, and that's why you're able to push them, and then they could just take it right back. And so having some perimeter cameras means, if they take it back, you now have vision of it, and that vision will help you, assault the location the next time. But that's my personal preference. Still a lot of sprinters running around for orange. I find that pretty interesting. And he's using them correctly. He's like going to the places, or he's using their mobility, their main strength, to do what he needs to do. So you're still going on the pyros. Well, it's pyros against sprinters, so like that makes sense. Let's see how your economy's doing. I should probably unpause here. Okay, so you are getting that fusion. Yeah, construction turrets being added on. Nice. So one of the things I like to recommend to people is to try to do a more back and forth type of thing with your economy and units. In fact, that's how I look at the game in general a lot of the time. Is just, are you producing units / defenses, or are you building your economy up? So there's certain times where you want more units to be able to defend the fronts, and other times you want, your front feels safe, but you don't feel like you can push your opponent, and therefore it's better to, do more of an economic play. And so a lot of the times, sometimes I see players put like, construction turrets out here where they can't assist the lab, but their whole purpose is to assist the economy. So they have like some construction turrets here and some back here, some for units and some for upgrading your economy. So what I usually recommend to people is to put your construction turrets more centralized. That way you can do that switch of I'd rather have units or I'd rather have economy. And if you want units, you just tell your construction turrets to assist the lab. Of course, you need to make sure to stop them from assisting it so that they can assist other stuff later on. But that way you can control it a lot more. You can say, make that choice. So I see you placing some construction turrets here, which is still, it still helps with where you're putting your economy. Especially if you put like an APHIS down here or something like that. And then they also hit the lab. So this is a good spot as well as up here. Assuming that you build your economy here instead of back here. Whoops, didn't mean to click that. But I guess my point for you specifically is, if you feel safe enough to build this fusion, like arguably, like even if you're a little bit unsafe, it's sometimes better to just go for the fusion so that you have it. So you have that bit of extra metal income. But yeah, you can, just click on your construction turrets. Now, obviously right now you're building construction turrets, so you want them to prioritize that. But yeah, have them, basically go more all in one way or the other, because otherwise you're getting stuff slower. So right now you're producing units and you're producing this fusion. Which in some cases, like, that's fine and dandy. There's nothing wrong with that. But just to give you another thing that you could do, you could prioritize it one way or the other. And I would argue in this particular case, glass has you kind of covered. Orange hasn't been terribly present. And you can see that, Orange does have some stuff running around. He's got his sprinters. So get some stuff that's good against sprinters, like the pyros. Get like 5 of those. And then you could even like, if you want to go even further with this, you could eat the T2 lab, assuming that you have a metal storage, and get all that metal, and then just prioritize economy. And then the moments that you feel like, okay, I've put it, I've given myself a bit of extra economy. Now let's get units again, and then you just rebuild the lab, or build a different lab if you want. You don't necessarily have to stick with one lab. But yeah, that way you just get that bit of extra metal to upgrade your economy faster, type of thing. So those are like little tidbits, little tricks that I think would help. Those things start helping you out at this kind of level. But yeah, if you watch like good players play, they oftentimes do things like that. I don't think there's like a great example at this exact moment, because they're probably all building stuff, but yeah. Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of half and half type of thing. Let's see, what is... Yeah, see, so like Regna right now, he has no factory. So this is actually a prime example right here. Um, he's got 2 fusions done, he's getting some advanced converters, and he's getting another fusion back here, but there's no factory. So that's just like him getting away with not having units right now. And part of that probably has to do with the fact that like brown here and light pink and dark brown, these are all the lower TS players on the team. And they seemingly feel very comfortable sitting back here and not attacking. Which means Regna now has the opportunity to just not have units. And then just in case they do attack, he does have these mines everywhere. These medium mines. So like, he has some safeguard. If you run into a mine, oftentimes you're left thinking like, oh, there's mines around, like I gotta be careful. So like that in itself is some psychological damage that prevents people from pushing sometimes. But yeah, no lab, just fusions. Fusions converters. He's building up his economy so that he can build more units later. So stuff like that definitely helps. It's just a matter of knowing, are you going to get pushed or not? And sometimes it's a gamble. Sometimes you're just dead wrong and you're going to lose for it. But I would say, RTS is oftentimes about those kinds of risks. Instead of going half and half, you go all in on one direction and see if that can work. Alright, so I'm glad you're mixing in some Sheldons here. Because yeah, Pyros are not going to cut it forever. Glass is even saying they have snipers now. Yeah, there's some back here. So yeah. So now the Fiends are definitely not going to help, and the Sheldons are going to help a little bit against like spam like this, but it's going to be harder against the snipers there. Okay, so he gets EMP'd. I would say this is not a good time to walk away from him because he got EMP'd. I don't know if you realize. Okay, you're coming back in. So right now you're basically, since you have Sheldons, you're basically handling the anti-spam. And you can do a little bit of damage to these Fiends and stuff, but like unfortunately these are going to probably do quite a bit of damage here. Yeah. Now usually Fiends are not great against tanks, but since they were EMP'd, that's yeah, quite unfortunate for him. So yeah, just keeping your guys around. Let's see, what are you doing back here? Okay, so you're okay, so you're back to doing Fiends. I don't know if I like that. Mostly because, I mean, yeah, it's fine to have some Fiends to help out with your, against the spam to like protect your Sheldons. But against like a bunch of T2, they're not going to be all that useful. Against those sumos that we just saw there, against the snipers, like they're just going to die willy-nilly, like for nothing. So I'd be very careful with them. Unfortunately, you lost your Sheldons. So yeah, that goes back to being mindful of what's going on. Which sometimes just means like, say you have to do stuff back at your base, but obviously the battle's ongoing. So you want to ideally take care of your base management as quickly as possible. Go back to so that your view's on the battlefield and you can see what's going on and react to what's going on. But yeah, these Fiends are not going to do terribly much here. Looks like there's a plasma. Yeah, plasma here attacking you. Yeah. It's unfortunate to lose this position, but not much you can do against that plasma. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind if you built your own plasma up here, by the way. Anytime you see a hill, especially like a hill like this, like that's, the ramp is on your side of the hill. Any unit that comes through here is going to have a hard time, doing a ton of damage to this plasma. It's going to be hard for them to see it, first of all. So hills are great for defenses. And plasmas especially, they get a little bit of extra range being on a hill. So this plasma would help contest the plasma that's hitting you, wherever the heck it went. Where is it? Oh, it's over here. So this is actually pretty close. Um, and yeah, just trying to be mindful of what's going on around your area, I think would help a bit. Um, yeah, all in all, it's like, yeah, you guys didn't have the mexes early on. No, it's mostly their mexes, and they got an eco advantage for that. And then you also got damaged. Chad Hunter also got damaged twice from bombers. And overall, like, this top side is just in a worse position. Glass is trying to squeeze out an Aphis right now. But yeah, right now, obviously, this would be a time when you're like, okay, I 100% just need units. So try to get as much build power on your lab as you can. This T1 lab producing scouts, I like. The Rascals. Getting some extra vision is always nice. Having a little bit of spam in there. Unfortunately, the radar's also out. Not that it really matters because this is getting pushed pretty hard. And so it looks like you choose to try to resign. Does that go through or does it not? Yeah, it looks like Glass left. Okay, so you left at that point as well. I guess this to sum up, so okay, so there are a few mistakes early on that I think would help you significantly in the long run. Just rearranging like how you build stuff a little bit. Like you ate that tree when you could have had that solar sooner. Rearranging your initial opener so that I believe you did 2 mechs and then 2 solar into 1 mechs into lab, which I would prefer to see it as 3 mechs, 2 solar, and then lab. If you feel like you're setting yourself back because it's because you stall slightly on energy on that 3rd mechs, you could get a solar after the 2nd mechs and then get your 3rd mechs, 2nd solar, and then lab. The idea, of course, being to prioritize grabbing the metal so that you have that metal, being stockpiled for later, for when you start producing units. It just helps get those initial units out. And then just being mindful of the map and seeing that, okay, a lot of the mexes are actually centralized, and there's not a lot of mexes to grab before that. So obviously you have your 3 starting mexes here. You have 1 additional mex here, and then arguably this one on the hill can pretty easily be taken out pretty early. So even this one is contested by mid. Obviously, you're not in charge of all these mexes, so let's just circle ones for you. And I'd say actually in your position it's even more important because there's actually 5 here. And then if you control this space, it's easier for you to deny this one from them, and then you also get this one and have that not being denied by you. So yeah, just pay attention to how the map layout is with mexes, and maybe try to rearrange how you do things at your base to crank out, I guess just crank out more grunts sooner. And sometimes that means building a construction guy first instead of grunts, because that adds the build power to your lab to get those grunts out faster. And that also means trying to push your commander out a little bit faster to get to the front, because that's basically what they did is they had more grunts and commander out there to hold that position. It might be useful to just see how they did it from their perspective. It's a pushing out fronts and just comparing it to yourself and seeing what is different here. So yeah, that's like one, and I guess like one or bullet point 1 maybe one or two, it could be 2 bullet points, I guess, instead. Um, third one would be like maybe rearranging um, how you're spending your build power to potentially do things like put more into economy or put more into units. Um, and that way, if you put yourself in the position where you can make that decision, you can decide like, hey, I want units here, or hey, I want economy here. Um, the fourth one, I would say, is probably your biggest weakness is just map awareness. And sometimes people just have off games and their awareness is just not as sharp. Like that's definitely true for me. I definitely have my games where it's just like, oh, now there's units in my base. When did those get there? Um, it does happen. So I'm not trying to say like, oh, you're always doing an awful job at that. It's just in this particular game, it's something that you could work on. And if you are looking to work on it, I would recommend doing 1v1s, especially on maps like CCR, to train yourself that awareness. Because on a map like that, it's something that you have to do well on. And if you don't do it well, then you're just going to lose. So it's a good training exercise for that. And also because in 1v1s, oftentimes it doesn't go to T2, especially on CCR. Like it's ends up being a lot of blitzes or incisors, and you stay on those for a long time because they can go around to different angles and raid different angles rather easily because they're faster than medium tanks or whatever. Um, and it's usually a vehicle because it's a flatter map. I'll guess I'll just put that out there too. But yeah, it definitely trains you because if you think about, say, like this map, say it's a 1v1, so you don't have all these allies. Say you start down here and he starts up here, and you start expanding, different locations, and you start grabbing all this metal. Well, now your metal up here can get hit, your metal down here can get hit. Your commander's probably in center somewhere, grabbing mexes. So like a raid can come from there, can come from here, can come down the center, can come down like this other angle. Like there's just lots of different angles to watch out for. So I find it very helpful personally. But yeah, those are the big things that I'm noticing here. To add to that, like another more of a minor thing, I would say your unit choice um, could could be worked on a little bit. Like I feel like that was just too many grunts in a way, because it's going like once your opponent basically grunts and pawns are bad against static defenses, and if your opponent already controls a location, they already control it. Like they already have towers here, they have commanders here. Um, Pawns and grunts are not going to be able to break those defenses. They're not great against laser towers. Um, so there's just not much you can do with them. If they were thugs instead or rocket bots instead, you'd have the potential to take out the towers. Um, yeah, rocket bots can do quite nicely. Um, but if you are able to get a big ball of thugs, they can take this down themselves as well. So there's that whole notion. Um, and then yeah, with T2 units, while the fiends were nice, they countered the they were there for the sprinters, I believe. That's a good choice for sprinters. But ideally, you want to be working towards something bigger. And if you still need fiends for spam or sprinters, that's fine too. But ideally, having the build power to crank out units quickly, but also because I think your metal was a bit high, but also working up to like a sumo or like arbiters. Like arbiters, I wouldn't really recommend against. Like I wouldn't recommend them against sprinters. They might be useful against those snipers, but ultimately, I feel like that portion of the game was just very much like you didn't have as much units to help defend your ally, to help keep the enemy at bay. And fiends weren't a bad choice because of the sprinters again. Sheldons weren't a bad choice, but they don't really do a ton of damage either, so you kind of need a lot of them, ideally. And then, yeah, if you actually need like a heavy duty frontline unit, sumo is great. Um, they're susceptible to the um, sorry, brain fart, the snipers. So you don't really want them against the snipers. So I think you had the right idea of adding on that vehicle plants for the scouts. Or you could do grunt spam as well. Um, but either way, at that time, you need to have more out there. You need to just have more units in general, more economy going. And that's basically how you lost that. Is if we look at this, you know, 3 Aphis, 2 regular fusions for yellow, um, 2 working on his 3rd fusion for orange. And back here, I don't know what Glass had, but I don't think he had quite as much as that either. So they were just able to get ahead economically. And then all of a sudden they show up, with a um, I mean, most of them are dead at this point, but they show up, with quite a bit there. Let's see, what does this guy have? Huh. Oh, he's got his base up here. Okay. So he does have a fusion and some converters and stuff. Um, I'm surprised. I guess he went most of the units and just stockpiled, all those, what are they called? Starlights. So I still think of them as annihilators. Um, but yeah, it's quite a few starlights and bulls for what he has. Um, yeah, I guess just to talk more about the eco part, because I think that is more or less the deciding factor here. They controlled the mexes, so they got that bit of extra metal early on. Definitely a big deal. B, you got raided, and shit like that happens, but ideally you see it coming, and that would help you, you know, not lose stuff so that you can progress your economy a lot faster. Um, and then C, rearranging how you build stuff so that you go more all in on economy or units, depending on what you feel like you need. And that's going to take some getting used to. Like sometimes you're just going to make the wrong call, and it'll feel like shit. Um, but that'll help teach you how to do it better the next time. So I would try to practice that if you can. But yeah, I think that wraps it up. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm just like checking really quick to see what your allies have in terms of economy. Yeah, I mean, it seems like yellow did a fantastic job here. Red has done a pretty good job with that as well. Pink's a little bit behind them. Brown's behind, you're behind. Okay, so yeah, it's basically like everyone's just behind where these guys are. And they're both like at the top here. So like having them both barrel down here, makes it really hard. I think, they basically did a better job than anybody else with ecoing. So that's why this all happened. Anyways, I hope this helps. Leave any questions either in the thread or in the comments on YouTube. Thanks for watching.